to unite the world under a single jihadist caliphate.
Use fear and falsehood.
My view is we had a double Guantanamo.
What do you talk about when you have nothing to say?
This is insane.
Some of these people frighten me. They frighten me.
President Bush has talked about our staying in Iraq for 50 years.
Maybe 100.
The danger from Iran is grave.
Well, I'm not concerned about the voters.
It'll be a really nice fruitcake.
But I can't be president unless you choose me to be, and I hope you will.
Deficit financing, big government, more taxes, more bureaucracy, more regulations, more policing the world.
What are you guys talking about, you know?
Hi, and welcome to Director's Cut. I'm your host, Charles Monroe-Kane. That was a clip from the documentary For Liberty, How the Ron Paul Revolution Watered the Withered Tree of Liberty. We're joined today by the film's directors, Corey Kealiher and Chris Rye. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. Appreciate coming in.
Thanks for having us.
So let's go back to the time and just remind people, who is Ron Paul?
Well, Ron Paul's a congressman from Texas who ran for president in 2008. And found himself at odds with his own party.
He ran as a Republican.
Right. And it was mainly over the war issue. I mean, he's a strict constitutionalist. He's strict fiscal conservative. You would think that's something Republicans would, love in their candidates, but because of the war issue, he was kind of marginalized and ostracized for it.
Now, two things. So we'll go to you. Just that I want to pick up on in there. One, I want to help us define what a strict constitutionalist is, so people can know what that is. But what separated him about the war as well? I mean, what was that thing that separated him?
Well, it was obvious to people watching the debates. His stance on the war was drastically different than the rest of the people on stage. The other 10 candidates. What's what it started out with, and he's been opposed to the war since the beginning. He voted against it. He never supported it. And these other candidates on the stage with him, they're basically, I guess you'd call them neocons,
Sure. And they're Rudy Giuliani, obviously George Bush. Who were the other people out there? Not John. I'm sorry, John McCain. Mm-hmm. And they were all. Then there was standard pro-war. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And so he separated himself there. It's interesting as I watch this documentary and I think about Ron Paul, and I remember the Ron Paul campaign. And this is a question for you, and also would be one for Ron Paul if he was sitting here as well. Why? I mean, he was not going to win. He was not going to win the candidacy for president for the Republican Party, but he spent a lot of money and a lot of his own psychic energy to do it. And so did you guys. I mean, you guys made this film. You must have started editing after he lost.
Yeah, we knew.
What for both of you? First, start with you. What would sustain your energy to make a film about a candidate who couldn't win and then making it after he lost?
I think it's the thing that sustained us all the way through the campaign too. Mm-hmm. Most of us knew that obviously they weren't going to let him be president. It just wasn't going to happen. But it was more about educating people. It was more about bringing people on board with the ideas of the Constitution and what it means to be free. I think that we've lost a lot of that in the last, 50, 100 years. We don't really have a really good grasp on what it means to be free and what it means to obey and follow the Constitution. And when we're doing this film, it was a lot of the same thing. We were more concerned with just trying to get this message out there.
Sure.
We were part of the campaign. Obviously, we invested a lot of time into this. And we thought that, well, this is another good opportunity, through a film to get these ideas out there.
And why did you make so much sacrifice to make this film?
Just to record this is, for history. This is I think a unique event in the political history of the United States. And even though Ron Paul, when he announced, he knew he wouldn't win. He figured this would be more of an educational endeavor than anything. And that's an important part of it too. So when we decided to make the film, we wanted to show people, kind of what happened during the campaign, what went down there in the debates, how these other candidates kind of treated someone like Ron Paul with his views on stage publicly in front of national audiences. They would ridicule and laugh at him and things like that. So we just wanted to tell the story, make sure that it doesn't go down the memory hole, and do some education too, show this to audiences and let them see, what happened in case they missed it.
Well, let's for our viewers who maybe don't remember Ron Paul or need a good reminder, let's see Ron Paul in action. Wait, this is a clip from one of the second debates he was in. Can you set it up for us, and then we'll show people this clip?
Well, what happened was he is trying to explain to people how our meddling in Middle Eastern affairs actually hurts our national security, because that's the reason people come over here and want to attack us. And Rudy Giuliani, the big terror warrior, jumps in and kind of interrupts the debate structure to make the point that Ron Paul's insane, basically.
And that's the argument we always heard, right? About Ron Paul. Ron Paul's insane. Ron Paul's insane. Yep. Well, let's see Ron Paul in action.
It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy. Stay out of entangling alliances. Be friends with countries. Negotiate and talk with them and trade with them.
They looked at that Republican stage that night and they're like, what is this guy saying? We've never heard anything like this. And what's better, it makes a lot of sense.
So there's a lot of merit to the advice of the founders and following the Constitution. And my argument is that we shouldn't go to war so carelessly. When we do, the wars don't end.
He was talking more about the things that really matter, not the war in Iraq, but should we be the policeman of the world? Should we be at war anywhere, and why, and when, and under what circumstances?
Congressman, you don't think that changed with the 9/11 attack, sir?
What changed?
The non-interventionist policies.
No, non-intervention was a major contributing factor. Have you ever read about the reasons they attacked us? They attack us because we've been over there. We've been bombing Iraq for 10 years.
If we misbehave around the world, there are going to be people in the world who don't like the United States, period, end of story. I think that's just common sense. I think most kids know that at the kindergarten level.
It's very easy to be Rudy Giuliani and say, we got to get the terrorists, or yeah, people will vote for you for that. It's very hard to get them to vote for somebody who actually makes them think or says, wait a minute, these slogans are fit for a 7-year-old.
Right now, we're building an embassy in Iraq that's bigger than the Vatican. We're building 14 permanent bases. What would we say here if China was doing this in our country or in the Gulf of Mexico? We would be objecting. We need to look at what we do from the perspective of what would happen if somebody else did it to us.
And I thought, what fun. How are they going to answer that? And it must have been embarrassing for the other candidates to have to sit there and hear this deep discussion and to know in their hearts the guy's absolutely right. But
that's a great clip. The Republicans must have hated him. So who funded this film? Who made it? Did Ron Paul fund it? Did Ron Paul campaign or supporters, or did you guys do it?
We basically just did it. We did it on the cheap, very cheaply, so that was nice. Chris has a 1984 veggie-driven Mercedes, so that saved us a lot of money on gas traveling around the country. And yeah, basically all we paid for was what? Food. People put us up, for lodging. A lot of the people that we went around and interviewed, and so we did it very cheaply.
You traveled around the country. You went to Ron Paul supporters all over the country.
Yep.
I think one guy was from the clip was from Texas, and a bunch of people.
We went literally from coast to coast to coast. Yeah.
On your own fryer greased car.
Yeah,
sleeping on people's couches.
We actually had a pump with us, a little pump that was pumped out, charged off the battery of the car, and we'd pull up and pump veggie oil out of the dumpsters, at restaurants, and use that. And we drove 10,000 miles on the trip. We did basically a loop around the whole country filming our interviews.
I just have to ask this question because it's interesting to me, because I was watching this film, sitting on my couch and watching it, and I knew this. They're traveling around the country in a veggie fryer car. You're young. He's anti the war in Iraq. He's anti-Afghanistan. You're sleeping on people's floors. That just sounds like liberal stuff to me, like completely. Like that's just the stereotypical way a liberal thing. But this is not liberal. This is Ron Paul's conservative. He's very conservative, actually, in a sense, more conservative than, say, even a John McCain. Like, what's the difference? How do you separate Ron Paul from, like, a total left-wing liberal?
It's just the message of freedom. I think that's what really brings people together on all sides of the political spectrum. When people talk about liberal and conservative, I think they're just very arbitrary divisions that we kind of impose on politics. And when we use terms like that, it's because we've forgotten what it means to follow the Constitution. We didn't really have a lot of these problems, say, 150 years ago.
Right.
We didn't have these deep political divisions. But nowadays, everybody is just trying to get their politicians into office so they can seize power and, take what they can from the system.
A simple message equals a vote. I mean, that's what's worked. But that means that the people who don't do that, you guys and stuff, aren't going to be quote unquote successful, meaning you won't win. Doesn't mean you won't get the message out, but they mean you won't be successful. Don't you find that frustrating?
Well, yeah, there's a lot working against us, but it kind of empowers you though, if you keep getting pushed down, you just want to get up that much more.
Sure, I can imagine that.
To move your views forward and to, especially with just educating people, about Ron Paul and the issues.
It's funny you say that. That was something I pulled out of the documentary, that some of these people, it wasn't like they were, they wanted to be abused or something, that they were victims, but I think they liked the fact that the media was unfair to Ron Paul. And they kind of liked that people thought they were dumb, but then they liked that they were being lied about, because they kind of liked the fact that then we would get back up again and kind of
I think
go
we just
for it.
expect that by this point. We just expect that.
Well, tell me about some of the people on the road. Tell me about someone you met on the road that you just remember, like, hooking up with them, being like, man, that's the kind of American I wish all Americans would be.
I don't know. I couldn't pick out just one person, because they all had their little quirks that were just really interesting.
Doing this trip, I think we interviewed, maybe 20 to 25 people for the film, and the gamut, the wide variety of people was just astonishing. It was
really, I was surprised, but I think that if you would have made I don't want to disparage this particular candidate, but I think there are a lot of other candidates that ran who, I think if you made a documentary about their followers around the country, it would be fairly ubiquitous. It would be this kind of person, this kind of person, this socio-demographic, this, but you guys, it was like, there were some total free spirit types. I was saying, like, my one uncle, like, he's a trip, and he's like a cool guy. Like, they're interesting, free-thinking people. It's interesting people that you got caught with. I want to show another clip from the film, and this actually is my favorite part of your film. It was about Ron Paul's it's the history of Ron Paul's logo. So if you could, why don't you set it up for us? We're going to see that clip about how his logo was invented.
Right. Basically, it's the word revolution, and they take the REOV and flip it around so it says love backwards. So it's basically like the word revolution, but there's a subtle love in there. So it's kind of puts a new spin on the word revolution, which is really a powerful word.
Right.
And they just came up with this logo, these people in Arizona, and people loved it, and they started making them.
And he didn't, and Ron Paul, I just want to make sure people get this. This wasn't like Ron Paul didn't approve it and Ron Paul didn't work with him. It just happened, and people started spray painting it, and they ran with it.
And this was all
very grassroots.
All
cool.
grassroots.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no contact with the official campaign at all. I mean, people are just out doing things on their own. They don't care what the official campaign thinks. I mean, they're just going to do it.
Wow. That must have made Ron Paul excited and very nervous at the same time.
Yeah, and it's kind of sketchy with the FEC, the Federal Elections Commission.
Sure, absolutely.
There's a lot of really strict regulations that garner all, watch over all the selection process and fundraising and all this stuff. So
you guys just threw a spanner in the works. I love it. Well, let's see that clip. Let's see the logo clip from For Liberty.
The Revolution logo, I don't know, I ripped it off of somebody off the internet. I happened to see something like that where they did the backwards love. And all we did was put Ron Paul on top of the logo and it exploded.
I don't know, maybe the implications are that a revolution means, you bring out the guillotine and the peasants storm the castle with pitchforks and torches.
The word revolution has a certain strength to it. Combining it with the word love obviously gives it a completely different spin.
We started the Ron Paul Revolution sign production.
Okay, here we go.
We would do this every Friday. We have at least 1 to 3 stations across, just in Arizona, the Valley of the Sun here. We would have people on a Friday making 200-300 signs.
So that's another batch of another 42 more signs for tonight.
We started shipping them to friends all over the country.
I needed some banners, and I saw one of these things that said Ron Paul Revolution. Now that's pretty cool. And then I got looking on the internet and I found out who was making them, and I just wrote him a letter. I said, I'm Linda Honeycutt. I would really like to have some of your banners. And he called back and he said, what's your address? So I gave him my address, and he hung up. And about 4 days later, here we get this huge box.
In South Carolina, we wanted to find who's going there, who's going to be there.
The stage is set and the candidates are ready for tonight's Republican presidential debate.
Sent those to Granny Warriors, and a lot of the activists that were there in support of Dr. Paul, they held them up, and the cameras got their first view of them, and that's when it kicked. It went cross country.
It went cross country. You know, as I watched that clip, I can't help but think that, you know, about the 800-pound elephant in the room, and that's Barack Obama. I mean, from what I was told and what we understood from the media is that he also had a grassroots campaign. He had supporters from young people. That was kind of a wave that started. I mean, obviously he won. It's a two-part question. So first, how did you guys react when someone with a similar style and grassroots background just kind of took over and kind of dwarfed what you guys are doing? And then also, what do you feel about the Obama grassroots campaign? What do you think?
Well, you know, I wonder how much grassroots campaigning was actually going on. I know in Stevens Point, where we're from, he had an office, and they had sent out a lot of young people to do some door-to-door canvassing. But it was all like teenage kids who just loved more the idea of Barack Obama as president than his ideas. And, you know, they paid him with pizza and soda, had a little party for him and everything. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much real grassroots was there.
And how did you guys feel when that wave finally hit? It must have been annoying, I would assume, to you when that whole thing, because that's all me talked about. It was totally grassroots and, you know, it's of the people and all that stuff. And you guys felt you were that, of the people and of freedom. That's how the media that's how Barack Obama framed himself. Mm-hmm. Would you find that annoying, since you probably found it disingenuous, I assume?
Well, I mean, we knew from our experience that what was going on inside the Ron Paul campaign was actually a real grassroots. Mm-hmm. There was no top-down controlling it. It was bottom-up controlling. And the media was definitely working against us the whole time, would try to paint us as these kooky, weird people, you know. With Obama, they were holding his hand the whole way. I mean, they were helping him along. So anytime they would have some quote-unquote grassroots things going on, the media would put all this focus and attention on it and make people believe that it really was this grassroots, when the real grassroots movement, the Ron Paul campaign, was kind of just tossed to the side and ridiculed. So, I mean, I guess what can you do? It's somewhat frustrating, you know, but that's just, you just got to move on.
What did you guys, the internet played an interesting role in the Ron Paul campaign, kind of post Howard Dean, and that no one else really did. What was the role of the internet for Ron?
The internet was the biggest driving factor to the whole campaign. Without the internet, there wouldn't have been a campaign like Ron Paul's campaign.
And that's interesting, because that's true. I mean, that's an interesting fact. That means 20 years ago, it couldn't have existed, meaning it can exist again.
Right. I mean, we saw something similar with Ross Perot. Sure. And that got pretty big, even without the internet. So, you know, without the internet, there's no way. Ron Paul's ideas have been out there for a long time, since the founding of the country. Sure. And, you know, why is it that just recently these ideas, you know, bubbled up to the surface and everybody got a good look at them? Well, it was because of the internet. Mm-hmm. It was very internet driven. And from the internet, it got out to everybody else, everybody who's not online.
It's interesting. I want to show another clip, because I think this clip, it doesn't really need any setup. This is a kind of a clip of you guys, the grassroots campaign in action, and it's a very telling clip. So let's see another clip from the documentary For Liberty.
I think the people now have understood how much power they as individuals really do have, and where the battle really is, mind to mind, individual to individual, one-on-one. Me putting a sign out on the freeway and 100,000 people see it, know what I think. I vote every time I put a sign up.
The sign bombing culture that developed as a means of spreading awareness, and was something that I did, you know, climbing up on overpasses, you know, putting up signs with zip ties.
These are all things that the grassroots thought of because their man wasn't getting the attention. So they basically had creative tantrums.
Young people are
it's just they're natural born activists. It's in their blood. They're rebellious. They rebel against their parents and their teachers, and so it's in them, not to be fearful and to stand up.
Don't just play by the rules. Think of ways to do unique things that break through.
It's not just what kind of places. It's like, can you attach it? If you can attach it, it went up.
Just walk down the street inconspicuously with the signs. Then you get somewhere, put up a sign, just keep on walking.
And all these young people that had never even they go, you got a permit to put that sign up? Never even crossed their mind. Didn't even blaze over their cortex, brush it at all, that they were going to seek some kind of permission from the man to challenge the man.
We do not need permission from the man to challenge the man. That's the quote of the day. I really like it. One part of your film that you follow through that's kind of a narrative for the film that I really liked is there was a walk across Wisconsin that Ron Paul supporters did. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the walk?
Yeah, this was after the campaign had ended, and this group of people, they wanted to do this walk to Minneapolis from Green Bay, and it was about 280 miles, about 3 weeks. And the reason they were walking to Minneapolis is because the Republican National Convention was happening there in St. Paul. And Ron Paul and his new organization that he started called Campaign for Liberty, they're holding a defiant alternative rally across town at the Target Center. So there's these two conventions happening 6-7 miles away, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened before. So these guys walked and ended their journey and then attended the rally in Minneapolis. So it just timed out really good for us because we kind of followed them through their journey and then intercut as they're progressing into the film through the history of the campaign. That all kind of culminates at the end at the rally there.
They seem like interesting characters. It seemed like they're interesting guys on the walk. It's interesting when you're talking about the alternative setup in Minneapolis. Is there's a stereotype of Democrats that they tend to shoot themselves in the foot because they splinter. You have different groups that splinter and they fight among themselves. But once Republicans have a candidate chosen, it's lock, stock, and barrel, and you follow, blindly follow, and that's what Republicans do, and that there's been success based on that. But so they must have really found you guys a burr in the saddle because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Republicans are supposed to follow their leader, and you guys didn't do that at all. What kind of flack did you get back from official Republicans or from other Republicans? Because I would assume liberals wouldn't be mad at you. You're walking across Wisconsin, oh, this guy's cool, that's interesting. But I would assume that it was the right wing, the neoconservatives, people like that must have been pretty annoyed at you guys, especially at the end. I would assume there was some annoyance. I'm sure he got a lot of flack. Did you guys get people just annoyed at you because you weren't doing what Republicans were supposed to do?
We weren't there at the convention, but a lot of Ron Paul supporters had been elected as delegates and had gone to the national convention.
Right, of course.
And the Republican Party was pretty annoyed that they were there. And a lot of those people were being watched, and the Republicans were really expecting them to just make a big show and just disrupt the entire thing. Adam Kokesh, who we just saw in that clip, he had actually snuck in a sign to the convention, and while John McCain was giving a speech, had pulled it out and said, John McCain votes against vets, or something like that. And they were afraid that the Ron Paul people who were there were going to pull, something huge. They were going to make a big, but, it never happened. It was just, paranoia.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, they actually had security teams following some of the Ron Paul delegates around at all times.
Oh, good for you guys. That's great. Tell me, I want to move into another topic because I think this is an important part of the Ron Paul campaign that I think a lot of people would remember, and I do. It was about fundraising. He was an amazing fundraiser. He raised a lot of money, or a lot of money was raised in his name. Tell me, the one I liked the most was the November 5th. Can you tell me, we're going to show a clip about it, but can you tell me a little bit about the November 5th? Was it November5th.com campaign?
Yeah, this is November5th.com, and it was basically an idea the grassroots came up with, and they called it a money bomb. And the idea was that, promote this ahead of time and pick a date. They picked November 5th, which plays into the whole V for Vendetta, the movie, November 5th, and how the movie is kind of against some of the things.
Remind people again what November 5th is. It's a significance. It's in England.
Well, it's Guy Fawkes Day.
Yeah.
But that's an aside. The real reason they wanted to tie V for Vendetta in was because of the movie itself is kind of against a lot of the things that Ron Paul supporters are against, like the spying, the wiretapping, and the police state, the developing police state. So the movie is just kind of a parallel. And they decided to have this day, and they just promoted it online, and it kind of went viral. And then the day came, and all these people at the same day, within 24-hour period, donated $4.2 million to the campaign, and I think that set a record at that time.
Yeah, it was. It was a record. Well, let's check out the clip. Let's remember the 5th of November.
The money bomb for Congressman Ron Paul, organized by grassroots supporters to coincide with the 1773 Boston Tea Party, is now happening.
Everybody wanted to see that number go up. Ron Paul's numbers, $6 million in one day. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Revolution's in the air. The resistance is on. Take action right now, ladies and gentlemen. Call everybody you know.
We are blessed to have had Ron Paul stand for us all these long years. Now we are here today to stand for him.
And there were just parties held everywhere. Just, hey, let's get together this time. Meetup, basically probably inspired by the meetup groups, which were just flourishing all over the nation.
Steve here, and we're in the Ron Paul headquarters in New York, and it's going crazy here. We got a couple hundred people, and Ron Paul's about to reach his goal of $12 million.
When we blew past, you could see the crowds going crazy as soon as we passed 12, and it was really probably a reaction that happened across the Ron Paul community. The old thermometer came down, and then a few minutes later, a new one came up with a higher goal, and the 12 million was passed, and it was just awesome.
So what do you think, man? That was awesome. Success? Success? Absolutely. 5.5 million so far.
Man. You set the record. In the history of American politics, nobody has ever raised more money on a single day than you.
Gosh.
And yet, this is happening without your campaign people coordinating. This is completely about grassroots, and it's completely about you just saying what you believe in.
Well, the audacity of saying what you believe in. Ro, we're almost out of time. A quick question. 2012, where are you going to be?
Campaigning for Ron Paul, I hope.
2012, where are you going to be?
Yep, we'll be there, and for Liberty Part 2. We're doing it.
Yeah, we'll come back for Liberty Part 2, and if he wins, we'll have you back even earlier. How's that?
There you go.
If he beats the Sarah Palin machine when he comes back, it'll be great. Well, thank you very much it was a refreshing documentary. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you
all
much.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us today as well. For more information on For Liberty, how the Ron Paul Revolution watered the withered tree of liberty, please go to our website at wpt.org/director's cut. And while you're there, send us an email because we absolutely love hearing you. I'm your host, Charles Monroe-Kane, and for everyone here at Director's Cut, thank you very much for joining us, and check the gate.
But I don't think it didn't stop the movement, because, Ron Paul was a messenger. He wasn't the movement. He was a man.
Though victory in the conventional political sense is not available in the presidential race, we must remember elections are short-term efforts. Revolutions are long-term projects.